So excited to introduce tonight's facilitators, Alexandra and Sonia from the Mary Center Parents as Teachers program. And with that, I'll let you all introduce yourselves and share your slides. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Sonia Palomo, and I am the program manager for our Parents as Teachers home visiting program with Mary Center. And I am so excited to be here. With me, I have my colleague, Alexandra. I'm going to let her go ahead and introduce herself. Alexandra, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alexandra Alemgay. I am a family support worker at Mary Center. Been a family support worker for about 5 years. So really glad to be here today and share some information with you all, and hope to have an encouraging, informative session.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Alexandra. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen so we can jump right in. We're both very excited to get to talk about such a popular topic this afternoon. And so if you could just bear with me as I share my screen. Okay, wonderful. And so I am going to hand it over to Alexandra. She's going to start with the first half of our presentation.
Awesome. So I'm sure all of you know we're here tonight to talk about and share some information on toilet learning. Next slide, please. All right, so we are, like we mentioned, we are from Parents as Teachers. What is Parents as Teachers? Is a free parent education program at Mary Center. Families can participate either by having in-person home visits, video visits, or phone visits. And what those visits what the program composed of, we have personal visits. So our program is tailored to you. So that means, you and your child, we set the agenda, you set the agenda for each personal visit. So your FSW or your parent educator is there to provide, information that is well-researched and to really help and support you in this parenting journey. And really to support, to provide a support as you go through all the ups and downs of parenting. Another component of it is group connection. So this is where our families come together. We hold them on a monthly basis. So our families come together to create a network where you and other parents can learn and support each other and grow together. Think of it as a support system, right? Where you have other parents, sharing ideas, information about this parenting life. Another aspect of it is regular screenings. So because our program is focused on early childhood development, we really want to make sure that the children that are enrolled are really developing on track. They're healthy and safe. So that means we are conducting routine screenings. I'm sure you're probably familiar with them. They're called ASQs. So we have those routine ASQs that we do during the visits. And then the last one is the resources. So we connect you, with any resources that you need, whether it be housing or food or you're moving and you need support with furniture. Your parent educator or family support worker is there really to connect you and make sure that you have the support that you need. All right. So if you don't mind, you can either shout it out, on unmute yourself, or you can type it in the chat. When you think about toilet learning, what's one word that comes to mind? Patience, scary. Yeah. Accidents. Yeah. Messy, yeah, definitely. Motivation, frustrating, yeah. Drawn out, laundry, that's a good one. Anything else? I don't think I missed anything else. All right. Poop on the floor. Yep, feeling the drone out over it. Yeah, it can be dreading too, you know? Yeah, time, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, all right. You can keep them coming in the chat. Yeah, I think it was just a good feel of, what comes to mind, when we think about toilet learning. It's kind of daunting, scary, it's all of those things. Poop on the floor, like you really don't know. Big high fives. Cool, cool. All right, so we hope, next slide, please. So we hope that, today as we go through this information that one, as we will go through some of the facts, some things to consider, like somebody mentioned poop on the floor, accidents will happen, and regression can also happen, as I'm sure some of you are getting ready to enroll your children in school, starting school. So we'll have that information. We'll share some reminders. And at the end, we will also go over some Q&A. We got a lot of questions, so I'm sure we're all excited to get through and hopefully answer some of your questions in the slide.
Wonderful. Thank you, Alexandra. So let's start with the facts. I think that this is a great place so we can all either get a sigh of relief and we find ourselves like, oh, okay, this is more common than usual, or kind of like what to expect. So let's hop right in. So children typically learn to use the toilet around 3.5 to 4 years. And so I hope that this is a little alleviating for our families that are joining, because maybe at some point we've started a little bit earlier in the child's lifetime. And so that can absolutely present a new set of challenges when we're starting a little bit earlier in their lifespan. Generally, children will first develop control over defecating before they are able to control urinating. And so a lot of the times you'll notice we get a lot of the wet accidents that happen. And children will most likely have control during the daytime, and then the nighttime control will follow. So these are just some of the things that we know are facts of what will happen in their development. And so we're going to hop right into the signs. So what signs should we look for to know that your child, my child, is ready for toilet learning? The first thing that we want to notice is that the child is interested in their potty chair or the toilet, that they're interested in wearing underwear, that they're able to understand or have the ability to follow up basic directions. Also, are they showing signs of expressions that they're ready to use the toilet? Many times we are concerned that maybe my child may not be speaking, but a lot of the pieces of showing readiness, as you can see in these signs, are very nonverbal cues. And so are they doing the little, potty dance? Are they, how are they, what are those cues that they're giving us? Are they having facial expressions or gestures to let us know that they're ready to use the bathroom at this age? Also, is my child able to control their bladder throughout the day for about, or are they able to stay dry for periods of about 2 hours or longer during the day? If we don't see that they're able to stay dry for that amount of time, then they're probably not ready just yet. Do they have the ability to pull down their pants up and down? Very important. And then do they have the ability to sit on and rise from a potty chair or a toilet? So these are very much the signs that we're going to be looking for, so the child is letting us know when they're ready to begin potty training. So some additional considerations that we need to keep in mind, for example, is my child getting enough fruits and veggies and water during the day? Sometimes we noticed a few problems will come in when it's painful for them to go to the restroom because they may not be having enough fiber or enough water to help them go to the process, go through that process of going to the potty. Are they able to reach the toilet seat? Do they have the right toilet? Like, is it the chair, the little pot, or is it seat that we put on an adult toilet. So do they have the tools that do they have the tools that they need in order to make this process a little easier for them? So is there a step stool involved, and do they have the right chair or seat? And then also very important for us to continue to offer opportunities throughout the day for them to be able to use the toilet. This will absolutely support that use of having them be able to identify when they have to go to the restroom prior to them having to go, then afterwards when they're just letting us know, by the way, mommy and daddy, or or my caregiver, I already went. So just making sure that they have those opportunities beforehand and throughout the day, so that continues to make it very normal that we're all going to the potty. And then, have we had conversations with those providers in our child's life around if there are some developmental concerns? What are those ways, the ways that have we talked to the primary care doctor? If we have concerns around our children being able to do certain of these steps. In some cases, reaching out to the occupational therapist if a child is receiving therapies, to see what tips and techniques we can also grab from them in this process. And as we all know, in this process of potty learning, accidents will happen. It's actually very common for them to happen. So let's see what we can do in order to kind of support this process. So for many of, this is how common it is. Specifically, bedwetting is common, and it's affecting approximately 5 million children in the US. 20% of 5-year-olds and 20% of boys age 5. And so in some cases, the common causes of bedwetting could be food allergies, bladder infections, or unusually small bladders. So some tips that we can share with you all to have bedtime control is to make sure that the way to the bathroom is well lit for the child to feel comfortable and not be scared to make it to the restroom. Placing a potty chair next to your child's bed for easy nighttime access, if that is the potty that they best prefer. And sometimes, waking your child up before you go to bed, or setting a timer for around that time that we know that they're usually gonna wet the bed, and have them go to the bathroom around that time. Also, avoiding sweet juices or soft drinks in the evening can really help with not irritating the bladder. And we can replace this with a small drink of water, and we can replace it with a small drink of water instead of having that juice that can irritate the bladder. And making sure that we're keeping the room temperature comfortable for our children. In some cases, they may be avoiding getting out of the bed to use the restroom if the temperature is a little bit too cold for them. And then when we're handling accidents, the way that we can handle these accidents is, giving our children clear instructions and teaching them what to do when an accident happens. So making sure that we include how to properly clean themselves, how they can change their clothing, and where to put the soiled clothes, whether it's in the laundry basket or wherever you prefer. And then also just letting them know if it happens overnight, where they can sleep for the rest of the night if they have wet the bed as well. And one thing that we can say is regression can absolutely happen in this process. And so it is very common at this age, and it's often due to stress. Many times in their little lives, especially when they're going to start school, there's a lot of change going on. And so that change may be caused by moving from a home, having a new sibling join the family, parental separation when they start school, or if they've had a change in their childcare arrangements. So all of these are triggers that can cause stress. And so just knowing that regression can absolutely happen. So when our babies are starting school, the way that we can help them to support if we have some regression that occurs is help them practice ways to tell their teacher that they have to go to the potty or to the toilet. Dressing them in easy to remove clothing or school uniforms without like a difficult clasp or buckles. And then also visiting the school with your child before it begins and pointing out where the restrooms are located so they know exactly where they can go. And letting them practice using the school restrooms before the first day of school. So keeping these in mind will absolutely support our little ones as they're going through all these changes. And then a few tips to support with the regression, as we mentioned, is I know it can be tough, especially when we're cleaning up the accidents, but remaining as patient as possible because we know this is a possibility. And then, revisiting the method that helped them learn the first time around. Encouraging them to talk about their feelings if we know that there's a few changes going on, and reassuring them that accidents are normal and that they will regain control again. And then, if there's a lot of change, just making sure that we're spending that extra time and attention with them to help them through this time that they're going through. And so I'm going to leave it back to Alexandra for this slide.
All right. So as we gear to the end of this brief presentation, because we really want to allow time for the questions, we just wanted to share some reminders, or I guess you can look at them as encouragement as well. Remember that, toilet learning is a complex and complicated process, that will take time and patience. So your child will make many mistakes before achieving success. So think of it as, before they start walking, they go through, the crawling, or before crawling, they go through all those milestones they achieve before they can start taking steps. And even when they do take steps, they fall several times before they are eventually steady and walking on their own. So that's one. Again, also it's important to focus on your child's own development, right? It can be very tempting to focus on their age, or your own timetable, or every other external, influence or internal influence. But it's really important to focus on their own development, because that would, help in the process. Because toilet learning really is less stressful when the child is ready is ready for it, because if you start early, and I'm sure if some of you have started early before noticing these signs, you will probably have encountered some frustration as well. And then the last thing, we all know how children love to be praised. They love to be celebrated. So give them their flowers, as some people say. So praise, reward, that positive reinforcement is really, really going to support and encourage them, as they're learning this new skill.
Thank you.
All right. So now, okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah. So we wanted to now open up for questions. So what are some questions that you may have? You can either type them in the chat, feel free to unmute. We'd love to hear some voices as well.
Thank you all so much. As we are waiting for folks to type their questions into the chat or to unmute, when people were registering for this session, there were a lot of great questions submitted ahead of time that folks were wondering about. And so one of the questions that I thought was really interesting is like any tips or tricks that you have for children with limited verbal communication skills on what are some ways that we can help them to communicate when they're feeling the urge to go or when they've wet themselves as well.
Yeah, I think that it's very important to keep in mind that, like as we mentioned, that a lot of the cues that the children will give us may not necessarily be verbal. It might be, a sound, or it might be a facial expression. And so just honing in, and also sometimes kids are very regular on the times of the day that they do go to the restroom. And so just kind of keeping an eye on time as well, to see, okay, I know that if we have breakfast at, let's say, 9 a.m., by 10, little Johnny's gonna need to go to the restroom. And so around that time, offering that opportunity to go to the restroom. So just kind of keeping that routine, and like I mentioned as well, sometimes it might not be a word, you'll start seeing them do the little dance, or holding on to like their private area as well. So just us tuning in to see how they're communicating that they do need to go to the restroom, crossing their legs all the time as well. So different things like that aren't not necessarily verbalizing it, but they are showing with
Right.
some other gestures. Mhm.
That's great. Yeah. And I remember actually my child's teacher taught all of the children in the classroom like hand signals for when they have to go to the bathroom, in case maybe there's some anxiety there about asking, especially if it's during like a whole group time or anything like that, so they don't feel on the spot. And it looks like there's some great questions coming into the chat.
Mhm.
So one of them is, how can I get him to tell me before he goes in his diaper versus right after the diaper is wet? I feel like that's probably a very common question parents have.
Yes. I think, keeping in mind, I'm thinking, just keeping in mind the age of the child specifically. So if, um, it's I think the age is very important, because I think when they get closer to the 3.5 to the 4, they're very much more open to be able to verbalize, like, I need to go, versus, by the way, I already went. Um, and then uh, and then also, just offering those opportunities, as we mentioned. For example, in some cases, if you're commuting to school beforehand, just making sure that we're making it a routine to stop by the restroom beforehand. And so just kind of like taking that time to plan ahead a little bit of time, and just continue to offer the opportunities, will absolutely be able to support in that area. But I'm curious to hear, Alexandra, if you have any other tips in that.
I just see, I think she responded in the chat that he just made it to 36 months, so he's like about 3. He just turned 3. Okay. Yeah, like kind of like what Sonia said, building on that routine, that consistency. And if you are using words or gestures to let him know, like for example, if for him to use before he gets wet is number 1, or if number 2, you show the number, however you communicate that with him, can also help in strengthening your child's ability to let you know before he goes. But I think definitely that consistency in offering the opportunities for him to go would help as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm also thinking, one of the things that's great about diapers is that they can contain the urine, but another, issue is that they do make it so the child's comfortable, right? And so obviously, this wouldn't be ideal to send them without a diaper to like, school or daycare where it could be a health hazard. But maybe when you're at home in the evening, or on the weekend, giving the child the opportunity to feel that discomfort, of wetting their pants, right? Because that's a really different feeling than going in a diaper that absorbs all of that moisture. Lots of great questions in the chat. Do you all see any that you want to pull?
Actually, I was actually going to add on to that. That would absolutely also be a sign that your child is getting prepared to be out of the diaper also, because they're already showing signs of being uncomfortable in being in a soiled diaper. And so you're you're like one step closer to getting to there. So I think with a little
Absolutely.
bit more time and the closer we get to the 3.5, 4, you'll see that they'll be able to transition now to say, oh, I really don't like being like this. So if I verbalize, or if I either I verbalize it or I show mommy whatever the sign it is that works for you, then it'll be done like preventatively speaking versus retro. So that's actually a great sign already that your child is letting you know when they've gone, because they're very uncomfortable sitting in a soiled diaper.
Great question. There's a question in the chat. My daughter is potty trained at home, but has yet to successfully use the potty outside of the home. Do you have any suggestions for getting over this? She seems unfazed by accidents, especially since her teacher changes her if she has an accident. That's a great question. Any tips for that?
Yeah, I think also, it takes there may be a few factors that can be going on. Sometimes just the comfort, like being comfortable in the bathroom that's available at school or wherever you may be. And so, just kind of asking if I don't know how old the child is, but just asking a little bit about, what are those factors? Sometimes the factors of does the bathroom that's out of the home, is it as comfortable as the one at home? Does it smell? Sometimes the smell might be too strong for them, so that'll kind of keep them away from it. Or is it at the right height? And so there may be different factors. And I think it really speaks to the child being comfortable with the teacher, that they would change them. And so it sounds like we're going to get there to that point where they may be a little bit more comfortable. But at this, just having that little conversation about what would be some barriers to her going at school. And sometimes those seats might be a little bit cold too. So different factors that affect it.
Absolutely. Any tips for little ones who seem afraid to sit down for number 2? He has no problem peeing, but when it comes to number 2, he's afraid to go to the potty. And that definitely seems like something parents are identifying with as well.
Yeah, I think I would kind of do an inventory to assess what's causing the fear. Because kind of like Sonia mentioned, with the different things to consider, it could be diet, it could be maybe it hurts. So kind of exploring to figure out, okay, can he do number 2 somewhere else? Or when he's about to do number 2, is he comfortable doing number 2? Because they will give you the signs, right? Either they're grunting or they're squatting or they stop playing and then all of a sudden they're like, that face. Is he comfortable doing it in a different environment? So kind of exploring to figure out, okay, what is it? Is it he's having a hard time doing number 2 period, or it's just the toilet that could be an issue?
Yes, absolutely. I know that for me and the experience, I noticed that in some cases, the children that I have seen are very scared of the adult toilet seat. And so they're very comfortable going number 2 in like the child pot. So it's very much like a trial and error, what works specifically for your child. But just identifying those things that might support their learning a little bit more.
Yeah, and then another thing I was going to add, going back to the rewards and praise, right? So if he ends up, if your child ends up doing it just a little bit, right? Make sure to celebrate that small progress that he made, so that can also be an encouragement for your child to recognize that, okay, it's not so bad. I can give it a try.
Absolutely. Let's see. Miss Curtis asked if she could unmute to ask her question. Yes, Miss Curtis, absolutely. We would love to hear your voice. Are you able to unmute?
Hello, are you guys able to hear me?
Yes. Hi, Miss Curtis.
How you doing?
Good, thanks.
Good evening, everyone. So I have a 4-year-old. He's actually a late bloomer.
We can't hear you if you're talking. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes, I'm able to hear her. Are you all not able to hear her?
We're not. Yeah.
Is odd. I'm not sure why that is. Um, all right, let's see. Ms. Curtis, give me a second. Let me see if
Okay.
I can unmute you so that everyone can hear. While I'm doing that, do you all want to pull another question from the chat and I'll work on getting Ms. Curtis unmuted?
Yes. So I see the next question here says, kid can control themselves when they're in the car, but outside of the car will not pay attention to go potty, even with reminders. I totally understand, especially with, especially at school, when, for example, especially if you're like in a park and you're playing, right? The last thing you want to do is waste any second of that recess at school, or even when you're out with your parents, you know, in going to the potty. And so just making sure that before we go to the park or whatever the case may be in here, just stopping by and just allowing that opportunity, and just knowing they may not go, and that's okay, but just the fact that we're offering that opportunity will absolutely kind of already set that routine of like, let's make sure that we go to the bathroom before, you know, we or when we arrive at a certain location, because in this you were saying that they're in the car, but just allowing that opportunity, and then before you know, you get back in the car or whatever the case may be, just offering those opportunities to make sure that they will connect that, okay, continuing to go to the restroom is the option that we want to offer.
Absolutely. All right, Ms. Curtis, do you want to give it another try and see if you're able to unmute now?
Can you guys hear me now?
I can. Alexandra and Sonia, you still aren't able to hear for some reason?
Right. Yeah, we can't hear anything. We can see that they're talking, but we can't hear anything.
Okay. Not sure quite what is going on, but Ms. Curtis, if you are interested, I would be happy to listen to your question and then paraphrase it for Sonia and Alexandra.
Okay. Okay. So I have a 4-year-old. He's a late bloomer, and he will be 5 in January. And I'm having problems with potty training him right now. So I was wondering, do you guys have any suggestions? He will go to the pad to to poop, but he won't go to the pad to pee. So I'm still having difficulties with him, and not only just that, he doesn't feel comfortable with putting on underwear just yet. He's still inside of a pull-up.
Got it. Okay. So Sonia and Alexandra, Ms. Curtis is saying that she has a almost 5-year-old, and that he will poop on the potty, but not pee yet. And she's really struggling with that. He will go inside of a pull-up, but it sounds like definitely getting him to urinate in the toilet has been a challenge. So any suggestions about that, as that it's typically the reverse of that issue, and that her son is 4, almost 5.
Hey guys, I gotta
Yes, I
go
think
into
what
my
comes to
class.
mind is
Is it okay
you
if you
know,
guys continue the
having
recording?
that
She can't even hear
conversation
me.
with the baby to see what are some of the factors that may be playing a role for them not to want to you know, urinate in the toilet. And so then from there you can start kind of pulling back the layers. And you know, we like, as we have continued saying, just making sure that we're offering that opportunity for them to be able to to urinate, and just kind of keeping that as a norm, like the norm for them. And then when they're ready and it'll click, it'll happen. And then also, I think speaking to their primary care doctor too, just in case if there's something going on, you know, whether it could be like a bladder, you know, irritation, or just having that conversation to see if there's something a little bit like additional going on with them.
Great. Thank you. All right, looking back over at the chat, let's see. Yeah, it definitely says that there are some other parents echoing that in the chat, that they have twins that are 4 and they're still not potty trained. You know, they might have some developmental delays as well. And that was a question that a number of people, when they were registering for this session, were wondering about toilet learning for children with various developmental delays, and what are maybe some considerations or, you know, alternative approaches that they should look for.
Sure. I want to just, I think emphasizing that the children may start potty training, or sorry, potty learning at age 3.5 and 4. And so this is a journey. It doesn't necessarily mean that they will be done with it by age 4. It's just that that's when they're going to be showing signs that they're going to be ready to begin. And so in this case, the journey might be a little bit longer. And as we were noticing, like the bedwetting and those accidents are very much still going on into age 5. So just knowing that it's going to be a journey. It's not necessarily, and it's going to take a few tries. So just kind of keeping that in mind, that most children begin to show signs of readiness to use a toilet around that 3.5 to that 4, and then it can continue. You know, it might be a full year of learning of it. And so just keeping that in mind. Specifically when it comes to the developmental delays, we were just kind of setting, you know, the tone from when they're going to be ready, but just that developmental delay may mean that for them, it'll be a little bit later, for the development to catch up with the age as well. So just kind of keeping that in mind, that not necessarily that the age would, in this case, would literally just be the number. It's just when their development reaches around that typical time frame per se. So hopefully that supports. And then at least to kind of think about that is just at age 3.5, they start showing the signs, and it'll take a little bit more time. But then, as we were mentioning, it's just making sure that if they're receiving services with an occupational therapist or a PT, a physical therapist, just touching base with them on how to support that process as well. And then also if they are in school and they're receiving around that age, they're typically working with early stages. So just touching base with their program coordinators as well, to see how their development can, where they are at that time, the development can align with this process as well.
Absolutely. And I can take this question in the chat. A parent is asking about, are there DCPS policies that parents should be aware of around potty learning where their child is in pre-K 3? We have an amazing assistant who is really working with my child, but I'm curious about if there are limits, rules around the number of accidents before being sent home, etc. So first, is it helpful for your child to be potty trained before entering pre-K 3? Of course, you know, that's absolutely helpful, but no, it is absolutely not mandatory, because this is a learning process and it's different for each child and is, you know, an area of development just like anything else. Children are not required to be potty trained before starting school. As far as any rules about like the number of accidents before being sent home, not that I'm aware of. For typical potty accidents, of course, you're going to want to make sure that there are a number of changes of clothes and that sort of thing. I can see, if perhaps maybe the accidents are, if it's a loose stool, if there's some concerns that it might be because of like diarrhea or something contagious, that might be something to consider. But really just working with your child's teacher, it sounds like you've got a great and supportive assistant who has some great knowledge and tips around there too. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you for that. I did see another question here that says, any tips for hesitancy or regression around wanting to wipe themselves versus having parents wipe? Absolutely. I think that goes back to the child being able to recognize that maybe the parent is able to give them, a better wipe or a better clean feeling. Because a lot of the times they're not as comfortable. And so just making sure that we're practicing with them on making sure that they're able to clean themselves very well. Because a lot of the times kiddos don't like to be, soiled. And so just keeping that in mind as well. So a little bit more practice, and just making sure that they feel that they're doing like the great job as well, like the parents. And so going back to Alexandra's point, just making sure that we're encouraging them, praising them with that as well.
What other questions do we have? Okay, I see a question in the chat. My son has autism and he uses the pot sometimes, and other times he won't, but will use it immediately after on himself in his underwear. Yeah, that definitely sounds frustrating, I'm sure. Ideas or advice about that? Again, it sounds definitely kind of like just a delayed, kind of reaction part of that learning trajectory, but also encouraging that he will use it sometimes.
Yeah, just to add on to everything else that has been said about, the developmental aspect of it, really reemphasizing consistency. And as you know, they also learn with routine. So like having those routines in place. Or verbal cues as well. Sometimes if they have those verbal signs, so you have like a chart in the room, in the bathroom or somewhere that is easy for him to notice. So he knows what is required essentially, or what's expected of him. So, and reinforcing that with positive reinforcement so that he understands what you really, what you're helping him learn in this process of toilet learning. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I wanted to state too, I know we were talking about DCPS policies and toilet learning. And I also, just for the good of the group, wanted to state too that if families are in need of pull-ups or diapers or additional changes of clothes for their children, we are able to provide that support if there are financial issues impacting the family. So if that's something that you'd like to learn more about, you can definitely email me. I'll put our email in the chat, or ask your family service team member who works at your school for support in that area. We would be happy to help with that as well. And I'll start putting some links in the chat too. A few people have asked if there will be a recording of the session. There will. You can watch the recording at readyforpre-k.org. We'll also post it on the DCPS YouTube page. Great comment in the chat. Constipation can also create pee accidents. That's a really good point to consider as well.
And I know that someone also shared that they were they ran into a challenge on vacation when the kiddos went to pee in a potty, and an auto flush scared him, and now won't go in one after that. So yeah, we're absolutely talking about those different factors. And maybe in schools too, with those automatic flushes, that may be very absolutely scary for them. So we can absolutely, and you know, maybe the ones at home don't do that. So just kind of, you know, re-emphasizing how they work and kind of introducing them more often. So I think the fear can go away a little bit more. And because those are very scary, even for us adults, right? When they surprise us. So absolutely.
I'm looking back at the registration forms too, for some questions. And I know we had touched on this earlier, but a parent asked about any tips for teaching children to wipe themselves. Just like as far as like the coordination goes to be able to do that. Any ideas about how to practice that skill?
Interesting. I think one thing that comes to mind is role model, because they love to copy what they see their parents do. If that's something the parent is comfortable doing. Yeah, that's one thing that I think about. And then also seeing if, you know, if they're developmentally ready for that, as far as like their hands being long or long enough for them to be able to wipe themselves. But yeah, or maybe well, I don't think there are any videos really that will show, but yeah, one, role modeling, to really doing the basics, you know, however you do it yourself, and teaching them without, maybe not you doing it, but teaching them how you would do it, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, modeling might be a little uncomfortable, but definitely effective for children. Also, a parent asks, you know, I know a number of accidents are to be expected, but at what point is it abnormal? Should we ask our pediatrician about the frequency of accidents?
Yeah, I think if it remains to be like ongoing for a long period of time, in a sense, and you know, you've gone through the factors of like, okay, it's not that we are not presenting enough opportunities, or you know, it's not like they're not on, like we've already tried the different types of potties and things like that, then absolutely sharing it with your doctor, and really any time that you feel that that may be the case. Because sometimes, you know, it may be something internal, like, you know, like a urine tract infection or different things like that. So just making sure that you're checking in on that sense. You know, there may not be necessarily like a set number, but just if you're continuing to see it for like a long period, like an extreme, you know, an extreme long period of time as well.
Absolutely. Oh, back to the conversation about the automatic flushes. The parent has a great suggestion of putting a sticky note over the sensor in the automatic flusher so that it won't startle the child. That's a great idea. Wonderful. And I think we probably have time for maybe one or two more questions before we start to wrap up. If anyone has anything they'd like to unmute and ask. I do want to point out too that I've dropped the information about Mary Center Family Support Programs in the chat, and also the Ready for Pre-K website. And there's also an attendee survey. So I am going to share my screen in just a moment, but you all can keep an eye on the chat. Also, somebody asked about Mary Center. Did you want to elaborate more on that, Andrea? It says I have a question not about potty training, but for Mary Center.
Hi, yes, thank you. So I was actually told about Mary Center today from a lady that called me about my twins in a universal health form.
I am so sorry. So I was actually under just listening with the interpretation for English. Can you repeat your question for me one more time? Because I can hear you now when I took that off.
Oh.
I was asking, I actually was told about or referred to the Mary Center today. That's why I was asking, because I saw you got, it says Mary Center on your background. So that's why I was asking, because she had called me yesterday and said that my twins need a universal health form.
Oh, okay. That
But she
sounds
didn't give me like you guys' number or anything, and she gave me the link to the form, but I'm like so confused.
okay. Okay. Yeah. That universal health form sounds like it is from what I've seen, it's a requirement that you need to have for when they start school. But what I could do is I can drop off my my contact information here. And so
Okay.
we can go ahead and then connect. Does that sound good to you?
Yes, thank you
Okay.
so much. Because I have a lot of questions and I'm confused a little bit.
Yeah, no, I hear it. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop it in the chat here.
Thank
So
I
you.
you
do
have
have a
that.
quick question too,
Thank you.
please.
Oh, sure.
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, please. I do have a quick question. I have a 2-year-old now. I was wondering, when does the lottery open for the pre-K or the preschool for next year? He'll go to school next year.
Great question. The school lottery opens in December, and that's a great question for the group as well. That if your child is not yet in pre-K, we will be hosting Ready for Pre-K sessions around lottery time that walks parents through the lottery process and answers questions about DC Public Schools pre-K programming. So definitely stay tuned. And now that you're on our email list, you'll be getting more information about it as well. But the lottery
Great.
will open in December.
Thank you so much.
Well, okay, so I've dropped those questions into the chat. Sonia and Alexandra, thank you so much. I know you shared a little bit about what Mary Center has to offer at the beginning, but if there's anything else that you'd like to add about services that Mary Center provides, definitely please feel free to do so at this time. And I have a slide up for families as well, so that if you do have additional questions or concerns, maybe you were listening to the session tonight and you have some questions about your child's development or something didn't seem quite right, and you've got some wonderings. I will put up the information for Strong Start DC, which is the early intervention program. So if you have a child from birth to age 3, you can contact them. If your child is over 3 years of age, you can contact early stages. And then of course your child's pediatrician or primary care physician should be able to answer any questions that you have as well. So while I've got those up, Sonia and Alexandra, anything else about Mary Center that you'd like to share with the group?
I think the other great thing about that we could share about Mary's Center in overall is that we do have a lot of services, whether they're medical, dental, behavioral health, social services, which is the branch that we fall under for our home visiting department, and then our education with BRIA, which is a 2-generation education program where parents can learn English as a second language. But then also for our home visiting program, we're so lucky that we're able to continue working with our little kiddos. They can enroll up until their 5th birthday, and then we can continue working with them until they graduate kindergarten. And so please feel free, if you're interested in our home visiting program, to reach out to us. And we can absolutely check in eligibility for that. And we would love to connect with you to provide these services.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I know in addition to posting the recording of the session for anybody who wasn't able to be there in person, Alexandra had passed on some really helpful tip sheets and reminders from this session that I will email out to families, and we'll also include in our newsletter that captures some of the information that you shared tonight. And then for anybody who was here this evening, I just put up a QR code on the screen, and this link is also in the chat. But your feedback is super important to us. It helps inform what the content of the sessions is and what we can be doing better or differently in the future. And so just for taking this quick survey, you're entered to win a bundle of children's books that we'll mail to your house. And we can send you bilingual books. We could send you books in English and Spanish. And so definitely take a moment to fill out that survey. We would love to get some books for you and to get your input. And with that, Alexandra and Sonia, thank you so much for joining us this evening and for sharing your expertise and for sharing information about the amazing services that Mary Center has to offer our communities. And I think for a long time, a lot of people thought Mary Center maybe only served Spanish-speaking families. And so we've been working to let the community know that Mary Center serves everyone. And so definitely visit the website if you're interested in learning more.
Yes, thank you for having us. It was our pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks so much, Alexandra. Thanks, Sonia. Thank you, families and caregivers, for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it, and have a good evening. Let us know how your toilet learning journey is going. Perhaps we'll schedule like a refresher session or maybe a check-in session later in the year to follow up as you begin. So thank you and have a good night.
Bye-bye.